So for our first video, we will attempt to set up Microsoft SQL Server in a Docker container on Windows. So the first thing we need to do is, okay, so what will we do? What exactly are we going to do? We are going to set up Microsoft SQL Server in a Docker container. We will download and install SQL Server Manager and Azure Data Studio. We might like to compare those two, and connect to our new instance. So that's the core of what we'll do. Then we will download and install the AdventureWorks 2019 database. When I say install, I kind of would put air quotes around it because it's not really that. I'm going to reconstitute it inside the database, for want of a better expression. Then the last thing that we would do is then view the database and test it. So let's get started. Okay, so the introduction, I will cover why are we going to use SQL Server. Well, if you do a little research on the internet, you will find that Microsoft SQL Server is a industrial strength RDBMS, relational database management system. It can be downloaded and used by individuals because it's not the it won't be the full corporate version. It will be like a development version. It's very popular amongst corporations, so there's a very high probability that if you get comfortable with it, learn it, you will stand you in good stead when you work in a company. The next question we need to really ask is, why Docker? Because if you're going to use a database, it actually, for real production workloads, it makes a lot more sense to have it running directly on a machine itself, not in a Docker, of course. The reason why we would run it on Docker in a container is that it impacts our machine minimally, so that we basically don't have to install anything except, of course, the Docker itself, and it's easy and straightforward. And you know, when you come to removing it, there will be no issues. And the other thing is that it has it doesn't interfere. The configuration is all set up by Microsoft, and so it will just run out of the box. So that's basically what we will be doing. That's the introduction. So let's actually go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing you definitely are going to need is something called Docker Desktop, which is a Windows specific piece of software, or Docker, that runs on Windows. It's rather a nice piece of software. It takes care of a lot of things for you and shows you things that you would otherwise have to see in a command line, but you still need to use the command line to perform Docker functions, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. So I'm going to assume that you are not a Docker expert. I certainly am not. So what we're going to have to do here is muck through this, and I hope you can bear with me. So this is the Docker Desktop tool. I have a couple of images here that I've been playing with. These are containers, sorry. It's very important to get the terminology just right. These are containers, and containers contain images, or are built from images. I think that's how it works. So anyway, so these are the same as you've seen over here. The other thing that we can see on this interface is that you can set this so that you only see running containers, and I don't have any running at the minute. So there's another thing that you can do. You must also, or it's very useful, to run a PowerShell or terminal of sorts, where you can issue Docker commands, and you can say, for example, they're very like Unix commands. So you can say Docker PS, which is like for processes, and it shows there aren't any. So what we're going to do now is issue a command which tells Docker to go out and get a particular image, in this case our SQL Server image, and start it up, basically pass parameters into it and start it up with those parameters. So that I already have that command set in my history, so let's just go back and get that command. So there it is, and I'll explain it to you. So it's docker run. So this is what you would like to run a container. Then -e, these switches are to allow you to set parameters for the container itself, so, or the actual software that runs inside the container. So we would like to pass in, set some environment variables. The first one is accept the end user license agreement, and you say yes. Then we would like to set the actual SA password, that's the SQL Server super user password, and in my case I just set it to this. You can set it to what you want, but it should be fairly strong. It should have some numbers, some caps, and one or two special characters at least. Then this P switch lets you map a port on your local machine to a port in the container, and the SQL Server classically uses port 1433, so we say that will map to our local port 1433. And then this D switch tells the Docker to get this particular image from this location, and use it. This colon separates what is known as a tag. This particular image, I call them images, but I'm not sure if that's exactly correct, but this is the tag, so it's the 2022 version latest. So now we just go ahead and run that. So he says he can't find the image because it's not local. I did have it local, but I completely deleted it to make this more realistic for you guys. Otherwise it would just be instantaneous, and that wouldn't be quite right. So what it's doing now is downloading and extracting this particular image. So this might take a few moments. Okay, there it is. So as you can see, it's popped on here. That's interesting. So now if you say you'd like to look at only the running containers, this is the only one that's actually running, and it even says that it's started since 15 seconds ago or so. And here's the ports. The status is that it's running and it's ready to roll. So the other thing that we can do here is run the docker ps command, and you'll see that there is one container running in here. This basically is a very similar information to what's in here. So at this point, we are now at a good point to reinstate or reconstitute the AdventureWorks database. So the first thing that you need to do is go to this website, which you can easily get to if you go to Google. You just put AdventureWorks 2019, it will be the top result. And then here, inside here, these are BAKs or backups of the database. The three columns are the OLTP, online transaction processing, which is the format of a live database that performs functions the whole time. It's called an operational data store. Then there's this kind, which is a data warehouse style using the Snowflake model of fact table in the middle and dimension tables around, which allows you to access any kind of data very easily. And then this lightweight version is basically a cut down version of the online transaction processing version. So we want this. So just take the latest one here, right click it and say copy link. So that's all you need from that. The next thing you need, so that's the link to the actual backup file. So we need to be able to restore the backup file, but we can't store it on our local machine. So we need to store it on the Docker machine. So let's go back to our Docker machine name here. Let's see, that's the name there, recursing, leave it. Okay, that's good. So what we need to do is we need to start a shell inside this machine. So the way we do that is, well, first we can say Docker, and what we're going to do is do a Docker PS, right? So that shows us what we got here, and there's the name here. So what we need to do is say, we would like to say Docker exec. So, and then IT is create a terminal and attach to it. And then this name here, recursing leave or leave it. Okay, so that, yep, and then so that actually makes the connection. And then once you've made the connection, you want to tell Docker what I would like to run, and I would like to run the bash shell, bin bash. So you do that and you're in. Here we are. So now, as you can see, the MS SQL there, then this probably is the machine name or the identity for the container, and then we're at the root here, and here's the bash prompt. So if I say ls -lsa, we have a standard Linux or Unix layout here starting at the root. Now what we can do is just use this temporary directory here, because there's no users of this machine. If I go to users home, if I say, for example, cd home and ls -lsa, there's nothing in there. So there's no home directories. So in that case, we definitely can use this tmp and say ls. That's just a shorter version of that. This is a more detailed version of listing what's in there. So there's nothing in there. So what we want to do, we want to say wget. That means like get from the web get, right? And then we want to paste in that link that we just got from over there, right? So now what this will do is it will go out and grab that backup file for that database. It'll take a few seconds. Okay, so we're back. So now this, if we say ls -lsa, you can see that the AdventureWorks database is here, the backup of it. So what we need to do now is go to we can leave this alone. We can go back to here. You click on databases, you right click and you say restore database. Right, so this takes you to the restore wizard. And then what you say is you don't have a specific database, you have a device that you're going to restore from. And then you go here, it's a file, and then you say add, and it takes you to the directory structure inside the Docker container. So this is not on your Windows machine at all. So where we need to go is to that temp directory here. And we see the AdventureWorks backup file right there. We can highlight it and we can say OK. So this is the one, that one, OK. So here it is, ready to roll with all the various details about it. And then we could, it's already verified. That's actually why this tick is here. But if we did verify it, it doesn't do anything. So everything's fine. We can just say OK, and it will pull that in. Database AdventureWorks 2019 restored successfully. And there it is. So now we can open it and we can see that it has, or should have, yeah, a whole bunch of tables. We can look at one of them, for example, person addresses, just for example. Right click that, select the top 1,000 rows, and and there it is. So we can, so this is working quite nicely. So that's exactly how you restore the database, or how you effectively install, in air quotes, the AdventureWorks database. Now that we've installed that database here and everything seems to be okay, what we really need to do now is a small amount of housekeeping. One thing that we really should do is get back to our terminal inside the Docker container, ls-lsa. There is that backup file. It's rather large. You don't want that inside your container. So, and also it was only here temporary. That's the whole point of it. So let's go ahead and remove it. rm-rf that. Right, so ls-lsa, and it's gone. Right, so now we have saved ourselves quite a bunch of space on that container. So the next thing we need to do is another piece of housekeeping. Is on this particular database we would like to run a new query, because we don't have permission on all of the objects. So what we have to do is say use, and then the database name, which is, it will already have it as a possibility to choose, and then say exec, and then it's a stored procedure, so it's sp, and then it's change db owner, this one, and then it's changed to sa. So we're going to run against this database. We're going to say use this, so that sets this as the active database inside here, and then we are going to execute this stored procedure. So let's go ahead and do that, and that's it. So now we are fully allowed to manipulate and look at every table in here. Okay, first things first, before we dive into the Azure Data Studio, what we must make sure is that we are in fact running our Docker desktop. That's very important, and that the particular instance that we're interested in this case Microsoft SQL Server, is in fact running, so that's fine. Then when you would need to go and install Azure Data Studio, you can go to this link to get it, and to find this link you can just go to Google Azure Data Studio download, and it's this link down here, not this one, and you click that. That gives you the possibility of downloading for Windows, Linux and Mac, all 64-bit pretty much. And once you've installed it, I already have it installed, Azure Data Studio, and I can start it here. Here we are. So it's something like Microsoft Code. It has some of these similar look and feel of that, so it could potentially be a plugin to that. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and create a new connection. So we say new connection. It already knows that I have one here. So let's go ahead and, so only what you would put in this case is that it's Microsoft SQL Server, that the server name, in this case Buzz, that we're using an SQL login, not Windows or any of those, or Azure authentication. The username is SA, because that's what we set it up to be, and the password, so that's what you do. You set, you don't need to fill out this part of the panel for this particular installation. Just say connect, and here we are. you're connected. And then what we can do is, so we can see that we're on Buzz databases. Here they are, in fact. So here is that it's online. This is the database. So we can open this one, I believe. Here we are. We can look at tables, and so there is another way to look at this, and that is to go here, go to Buzz, look at, then you can see the objects, the database, security, and server objects. And then when you're at the particular instance here, the particular database, you can look at your tables. And so, and I believe we can adjust the width of this, and I believe we should be able to look at this. We can exactly explore the whole database in the normal way. We should also be able to right click and say select the top. So this is the query that it ran, this is the results. So this is all pretty nice. So we will explore this in more detail in a future video. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.